Welcome back. This week I've got a little more done on the 94 Harley. Got the carburetor for that Farmall Cub back together, and I got one more piece painted for the pull tractor. We're going to get busy on this Fortune block again next week. And speaking of next week, I'm going to have some footage to share with you for some of my seniors that are doing a little work outside of school. And then they're going to be returning on November 16th, which I'm very excited about. So there'll be a lot more footage to share with you on what the students will be doing in the classroom. This trunk is the last piece that needs to be painted for the Harley. So we're going to get these pads off, get the speakers out, get this cover off, and any reflectors and lighting or whatever is on it. There's a little bit of body work to be done to this before we can prime it to paint it. But again, the first thing we need to do is get it all pulled apart. I'm going to start by getting these nuts off here that hold on this back pad, and then we can get this cover off, and then we'll start focusing on some of the smaller stuff. I got the screws out of these ultra classic emblems. I'm going to remove these, and just like with the rest of the bike, we're going to get rid of this stuff. I just don't think it makes the bike look good. I think it muddies it up, and to me it just detracts from all the other flaws that Harley has in their motorcycles. But we're going to fix a lot of those. Looks like they've got more fasteners holding the trunk together than the engine. We've got now I've got all the fasteners loose from the back band with the tail lights, so I got to take a razor blade and cut that seal, and then I can pop it through like I did that one there, and then that should be everything that I need to take off of the trunk, so now I can get started on the body work. Something else I don't particularly care for on this Harley are these fishtail exhausts, so we're going to cut these off. They'll be a little bit under the bag, but it should still work out okay. I just don't like the look of these. We'll get that kind of cleaned up and put these on. It's going to be much better than it looks. You've seen with the bag on it, so you know what that looks like, but I pulled it back out so I can bolt the exhaust back on. So this is what it looks like without those stupid fishtails. Got it polished up pretty good, so the exhaust is going to be fine. So now that both sides are bolted on tight, I can get busy actually putting the bags in permanently, get the tops polished, and then we'll get busy on that trunk. I'm in the process of putting the Farmall Cub carburetor back together. It's out of the dip tank and looks really good. What I'm going to do now is take our main jet and blow through it. Now most of the time the main jet will go all the way through, but this one's a little bit different. It actually will end up at 4 emulsions, or emulsion holes at the end of it. So what I'm going to do is blow through this, and you should be able to see the carb cleaner come out of each one of the 4 holes. So then we know that we're clear. I need to do this in such a way so when I spray it, it doesn't spray all over the camera. So you should see 2 going down and 2 going up. Just like that. So we know this is clear. Now we can get this back into the carburetor. We'll get the main put back down into the body. Make sure that our gasket is there. Get it started gently with our socket. And just snug it down to compress the gasket. And that part of it is done. I've got the float needle seat back in the body, and we're ready to put in the needle. It looks really good, so we'll stick that back in there. Now a lot of times the needles will connect directly to the floats, but in this case it doesn't. What I'm doing with this is a brass float. Most of the time they'd be replaced with a neoprene or a plastic type of float. But this one is still in good shape. It's cleaned up, and I'm going to shake it. And sometimes they'll get corroded and get a pinhole in them, and they'll fill with gas, and that'll make the float sink. So it will flood the carburetor basically. But this one, there's nothing in there. It seems good and solid and clean, so we're going to reuse this. So this will get put back into position, like so. And we'll put our pivot pin through as well. Now we still have to adjust it, but at least we have it in there now. And if you saw Jonah last week, he was doing some adjustments on this. And we don't have a factory adjustment. I can look one up, but what I'm going to do with this one is we're going to take and push this up until that needle seats. And once we see the needle seat, I want to look at this arm here and see that we're level or parallel to the body of the carburetor, and that'll be a good enough setting to make sure that we've got enough fuel in the bowl, and it's also not going to be too much fuel in the bowl. While putting the carburetor back together and putting the gasket on it, notice that it had shrunk a little bit, which is common for quart gaskets. But anyway, putting it on, it broke loose right at the bowl area. So we're going to make one. You've seen us do this before, probably not with a cork though. But we're going to make a quart gasket for this right now, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We've got the carburetor body set up in soft jaws, and we've got our quart gasket a little bit bigger than we need. So the first thing I'm going to do is knock out the perimeter of this, and then we'll start working on the holes and the orifices from there. So I'm going to take and lay the gasket nice and tight. I'm going to take my ball peen hammer and gently strike the perimeter of the carburetor, which will cut it. You can see how that's happening right there. If you can see the cut or not, but you should shortly. Looking pretty good so far. Pretty soon I'll be able to rip the gasket off of it. There we go. Now if I pull it up nice and easy and it comes, that's great, like that right there. But if it doesn't, I just have to strike it a little bit more. Got to keep it all in place though, so it does have the right shape. There we go. It's looking good so far. Closer. Just got a little bit up here to do. That should finish us off for the perimeter. Alright, there's the hole for the gasket piece, a piece we don't need anymore. This is our actual gasket. So there's the shape of the carburetor. So now what we have to do is start focusing on the internal pieces so that it'll fit. Those pieces will fit when we put the carburetor back together. Since this gasket is pretty small, what I'm going to do is focus on half of it at a time. So to keep it in place and not have to hold it with my fingers, because what I'm worried about, you can see the orifices there, if I end up putting my finger through that, that's going to make the gasket collapse in, then it's going to change the size. So what I want to do is I'm going to use masking tape to tape the gasket tight to one side, and that should hold it for me while we're making this portion of the gasket, and then we'll tape this side and then go to do the other side. Now we're going to use this end of the hammer, the ball end, to make the gasket, that's actually what it was designed for. And again, you've seen me and the students do this in previous episodes. So, but now I'm going to be even more gentle. And what I'm cutting out here is the bowl area for the carburetor. I do need to keep lifting periodically. So we're going to keep doing this around the entire perimeter until we get that center out, and then we can start working on some of the smaller pieces. So the part of the carburetor that deals with the float and the fuel supply is pretty much done. So now I want to focus on where the main jet and the air come into the carburetor on this side, and then we'll start focusing on the really small orifices. And we'll just keep doing that around until we get our cut, and then we can pop that piece out. Alright, looks like we got it. Just need to pull the gasket up out of here because it's collapsed inside of it, which is fine. And there's our perfect circle. Oops, sorry. There's our perfect circle. And the jet, the bowl as well. Now we have to get this passage here done, and then we'll focus on the four bowl holes. You can see we're looking pretty good. We've got our bowl area done, we've got our venturi area and the passage here. So now we really only have to focus on the four bolt holes, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. It's going to be a little bit different since the holes are kind of small. Also, this area here came out pretty good, but I think once it's off of the base, I'm going to take a pair of scissors and kind of knead this up just a little bit so the passage is as wide as it normally would be. It's fine like it is, but I would like to make it as close to the original gasket as possible. So the last thing to do for our gasket is to get the 4 holes that hold the 2 pieces together taken care of through the gasket. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a punch. Okay, this is a starting punch, and it's a little bit, just barely smaller than the hole. So what I'm doing is I'm finding it here and locating it with the punch. And then what I'm doing is I'm twisting and putting some force on it to push the cork gasket all the way through the hole. Okay, do a little bit more pressure there. I can feel it actually when it hits the aluminum. So then I know it's there. Now I'm going to do I've already done these 2. I'm going to do this last one here. I'll double check exactly where it is. It will find itself as long as we're close. It will be able to center itself. Let's go here. Go twist with some moderate pressure. I feel that there. And that's the end of that. So now you can see that I have a hole in the gasket. I hope you can. You're going to see it here shortly. And I'll show you what we're going to do. So I'll gently take the tape off, making sure we don't rip the gasket because it is weaker now than it was. Just be really careful there. We don't damage it. Now pull the gasket off, and you can see the holes are there, but the cork is left inside of the body. So all we have to do is take like a paper clip or something and pick those out, and then there's our gasket. So now I've got my paper clip. Take out material that we punched through for the holes. Most of these holes go all the way through, so if they go down too far I can always push them out the other side, but I just soon pick them out now. There's that one. And we got a 4th one there. There's our gasket again. Looks pretty good. So I will be able to put this carburetor back together, so we don't have to order an entire kit just to get the gasket, or have to wait a week or more to get one in. So now we can put this back together right now. With our gasket in place, it's time to get the 2 halves together and bolted. Make sure our gasket lines up. Just putting the bolts through the holes. With the 4 screws started, we can get them all tightened down even now. You see, we're doing a good job here compressing that gasket. That's all that's going to be necessary. We'll get them all snugged first, and then we'll come back and final tighten them. Put the needle jet in, and this thing will be ready to put back on the tractor. This is the seat pan for that pull tractor. I've got it all sprayed in red. I thought the entire pan was going to be covered, but the back and the sides are going to be seen, so I need to wet sand these down and respray the red. With the seat back all wet sanded and ready to put the red back on it again. Come on. Alright, a couple more coats of that and we should be good to go. There's the seat pan back all painted, looking nice. We'll get this back to the guy and we'll begin working on a couple other pieces for next week. Next time on Bulldog Builds, we'll have the body work done on that Harley trunk and about ready to paint. We'll get the drag bike front caliper rebuilt, and we'll get back to work on the steering box for that old Rome grader. See you next week.